The Citizen Report is a production of New Shannon Media. All content protected under copyright.
And welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm John Shannon in North Carolina.
And I'm David Howler in Oklahoma.
And thank you for joining us. As always, this newscast is real in-depth American. Thank you so much for joining me. And David, great to have you back on. I know that you've just been going through really just an ordeal with the weather out there in Oklahoma, and that's what we're going to lead off with. Because a lot of viewers may not even be aware of what just took place, but it's by every metric historic. And David, I'm really just going to toss it to you and just let you talk about that, because it was a big deal for, you know, what we're still going through, I should say, in Oklahoma, literally as we're speaking right now.
Oh yes, and yeah, for viewers that weren't aware of last week, we had a massive ice storm that took place in Oklahoma, and obviously I am pulling up. Hang on, there we go. Whoop. There we go. What I was going to pull up is this tweet from the National Weather Service office in Norman. And here it is.
It actually just came up. Go ahead, David. My apologies.
Yes. So pretty much we had a massive ice storm that literally came from the Texas Panhandle and all the way through Oklahoma. And as viewers can see, as long as you ignore this other part here that shows the tweet and everything, you had this, I guess you want to call it peach shading, that pretty much ran from just east of Wichita Falls through just west of Ardmore, Sulphur, Davis, the Arbuckles, through Seminole. That was at least traced to a tenth of an inch of ice. That's just a glazing. It's, you know, just a nuisance. It may cause problems with the roads and things like that. Now, in this slightly darker yellow shading that went from Cushing and Stroud through Shawnee, Pauls Valley, just east of Duncan, through Wichita Falls and Seymour, and just past Elk City and Woodward and near Alba, that's at least a tenth of an inch up to a quarter of an inch of ice. And while it may not be enough to, and at least normally wouldn't be enough to knock, you know, power and bring trees down. However, as I'm about ready to talk about, and obviously the amounts get bigger and bigger, like here in the red, like myself, I end up with at least a quarter to half of an inch of ice. Oklahoma City, Stillwater, near Ponca City, they end up with at least over a half inch of ice. The I guess the blue shading, which represents places like Enid, Guthrie, places like that, Perry, that represents at least 3/4 of an inch to an inch of ice. When it gets up that high, and we all know this, and Jonathan, you experienced this in 2000, I experienced this firsthand in the 2000s in general with all the ice storms we had in our state and over in Arkansas. When you get that much ice, that is enough to where it becomes a huge problem with regards to trees and power lines. But I'll get to that here in a second. The darker shade of purple, which ran from Canadian and Kingfisher counties, that's an inch to 2 inches of ice. Means some parts of the far west OKC metro area ended up almost up to 2 inches of ice. And maybe perhaps some localized areas did actually reach 2 inches of ice. When it gets up that high, and Jonathan, you and I both know this, that can absolutely be debilitating to the trees and to the power line system. And there are a number of folks right now that are currently without power right now across our state. First and foremost, I'm going to pull up the PSO, which is Public Service Company of Oklahoma. And as you can see, there are still a number of customers right now that are without power. I'm going to zoom in on this area down here as an example. Let's zoom in.
Let me cut just a second. For viewers, it appears, at least on my end, that there's a pretty long lag. It took a good minute for what David was showing with the freezing rain accumulation map for that to show up. So David, go ahead, and when you pull up something new, kind of give it a minute or two and just keep talking to give it a chance to load up. But I just wanted to say that I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, David.
Yeah. So like here in Apache here, so this is Apache here. Currently right now, there's about fewer than 5 customers right now that are without power. So, and yes, I'm giving it a second here for it to back out. Now, we are going to go up here to Chickasha here as another place here that's seeing a good number of people without power here. And, you know, most folks in Chickasha have seen their power restored here. So there's at least fewer than 5 customers here across parts of Chickasha that are currently still without power, but I imagine most folks down here are doing a great job with getting the power restored in a timely fashion. I think by far, Jonathan, just looking through Twitter all last week, I think out of all the power companies, PSO has done a much better job at handling this situation compared to OG&E. And I'm going to bring up the OG&E part of it, why I say that here in just a second. And obviously, on Jonathan's end, we are having some issues with this share screen loading in and things like that, so I do apologize for that. But I'll give it here a moment here for everything to load now.
Go ahead and go ahead and keep rolling. You know, just make sure you're describing what you know you're trying to show, just in case.
And so once viewers see this is the OG&E system watch here. So I'm zoomed in to Central Oklahoma, the Oklahoma City metro area here, and right now there are at least 120,000 customers now without power, and obviously the numbers keep adjusting with each and every hour. So by the time this podcast gets released, the number of power outages may look different here. So for example, you know, as it is now when it gets released, it could be perhaps closer to 100,000 power outages. So this is a fluid situation here with regards to the power outage system, but it goes to show you that OG&E is doing its best to restore power and get power restored here. Now, as we zoom in to the Oklahoma City metro area, and once viewers is able to catch up and see this, you're going to see there are still plenty of areas throughout the metro area. Here we are, as of this recording, Monday night, approaching Tuesday morning of Election Day on the East Coast. And yet we still have a number of customers in the Oklahoma City metro area, no less, Jonathan, that are still without power. And in many cases, their power went out as early as Monday morning at about 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning my time, when the first wave of the freezing rain came through the Oklahoma City metro area.
Yeah.
Now, I'll zoom back out and go to my town, Chandler, which still has a a good number of customers still without power. Certainly on the some areas around Sparks, and I found this out too, Jonathan, that Sparks may not have power restored until maybe perhaps next week even.
That's
and that really goes to show you the fact that in many towns like that, many power companies are just having problems just reaching to these rural areas and getting power restored to them. I know 2007, I was living in Davenport, and I believe it took roughly about the same time frame, about 1 or 2 weeks before the power crews could even reach Davenport to get the power restored there. And on top of that, we had a tree fell on the line and took the line out. So, you know, that added on an extra week, and then we had to call a local electrician just to come out and fix it, and that took a while. So that just really goes to show you that in many cases there may be some really, really small towns here, even though they may not necessarily show up on a system launch like here in Sparks, for example. I'll be honest with you, Jonathan, there are still many people in Sparks are without power here. And they, like I said, they may be without power for at least a week.
Yeah.
At least additional week, minimum.
And the ice, you know, when you have a major ice storm event, as you're describing, as you've just gone through, and still having the effects of the ice storm, you know, it doesn't just come and then just go away the next day. It's not like you get the ice and then it's gone. So when you think about it, you're not just dealing with the fact that ice had brought down the power lines upon forming. You're talking about ice that's staying there, right? You know, it's not hadn't all gone away, I assume.
Well, in a lot of cases where the temperatures has warmed up recently, it has warmed up enough to where I think the ice has melted. And on top of that, toward the end of that whole storm system event, we had rain where temperatures warm up just enough to where it would be just all liquid instead of freezing on contact. So that did help, at least with the melting of the ice on those said trees and power lines. But I'll just tell viewers this, and Jonathan and I were just talking about this off the air. So I had class back last Thursday. So I was coming home, driving down this street called Adair Boulevard, which is the main trend that goes through part of the college campus at a college I go to. And I'll tell you what, from, just past that street where you turn off to go toward the back end of all the buildings, all the way down to Air Depot Boulevard, I saw trees and lines, basically trees that were just leveled, okay? Trees that were actually leveled. And the street lights, the signage, the lines, and everything were just so twisted and everything. And Jonathan, I gotta be honest with you, it looked like a war zone. I kid you not, folks. It literally looked like as if a tornado came through the Midwest city area and just did incredible damage that looked like a tornado in some cases, Jonathan. And Edmond was a little bit similar, but it didn't have the power lines twisted or the lights twisted or anything like that. But I'll tell you what, I saw more trees down on the median of Broadway Extension than you could shake a stick at. So, you're right about these lingering effects. Even though, yes, the ice has long since been melted on the power lines, however, you could still tell, and even toward the end of last week, you could still tell the lingering effects of this ice storm, by the way, the lines were still twisted, and the way, in some cases, especially, just driving on Adair Boulevard, there were trees that were literally laying in the road. Yeah, there were trees literally laying in the road that I had to go around just to avoid them.
Yeah.
Now, this was by far, and I say this on Facebook too, this was by far the worst ice storm I've seen in about 13 years, since that 07 ice storm that we had. That was by far the worst ice storm I've seen in terms of damage it did and the number of people that were without power across our state, across 2 different power grid systems, no less. And in fact, at one point, I'll mention this real quick too, before I toss this back to Jonathan. There were, at one point last week, about 700,000 customers across our state that were without power. That is by far the most amount of people that were without power since that aforementioned 2007 ice storm. And now that one, Jonathan, at one point, 1 million Oklahomans, 1 million Oklahomans across our state were without power. And in some cases, it took at least 2 to 3 weeks after that ice storm in 2007 hit before many customers finally got their power restored.
Yeah. And David, Oklahoma is a really weather-prepared kind of state. And so when it hits hard, when you have a storm like this hit Oklahoma hard, that's how that's a good metric to measure how indeed significantly severe this ice storm really was. It wasn't just a little bit of ice. This was a very, very severe ice storm. And I remember just before this happened to you, that if I'm not mistaken, there was actually thunder snow detected on radar out in Texas Panhandle too.
I agree. There was thunder snow, there was thunder sleet that were detected on radar. I mean, it was, I remember tracking it. I think it was Sunday night when this whole thing got started. And I tell you what, it got so serious that the sleeves came up and my glasses came off. That's how serious that was.
Yeah. And David, I must say, I've got to tell you, I literally just now crossed over into election day here on the East Coast. And I must tell you, David, I'm really concerned about Oklahoma being able to do its election going into today. I think from what I'm hearing, they have found a way to restore power to the polling precincts, although those watching, you need to check your local jurisdictions and check to ensure that. But I'm concerned, David. Is Oklahoma ready for the election?
I think we are. I think one of the things that OG&E mentioned as well, I think I saw this on their Twitter last week, or on one of the articles. I forgot where I read that from. But anyway, they did say that they would make it a priority to restore the polling places and make sure that those polling places have power before Election Day, so that way at least people could go out there and cast their ballots.
Absolutely.
So at least OG&E understands the importance of this election, and so I'm glad to see that they made that a priority to make sure that not only could they get out there and get those polling places electricity that they need, that they made it a way to where every single voter could come out to those voting places in a much safer and cooler environment to be able to have their voice and have their say.
I think this is a good point where I could where to bring this up, and that is you have a district, and David, you'll have to fill me in on which district number it is, but it's a district.
District.
It's the district where Democrat Kendra Horn is currently the congresswoman of that district. I believe she's represents part of the eastern portion of the state. I want to say.
No, it represents much of the Oklahoma City area, and it does cover parts of Potawatomi County, including the city of Shawnee.
Okay, so it does go out east in a way from, or does it go out east from Oklahoma City, but just not as far out east as I thought.
Correct.
Okay. So you're in a very Republican state. I must say, very, very strong red, very, very strong red state, at least generally speaking. And David, I want to ask you, we've got this election literally now hours, in my case, today officially now. And we have Trump on the ballot. And I have to ask, do you think that Democrats like her that are kind of came in on the coattails of the 2018 midterms, do you think that she's going to win re-election, or do you think Democrats like her are going to be out?
I think, and keep in mind this, not only is Oklahoma a very red state, but Oklahoma is an oil and gas industry state. In fact, we have several major energy companies like Devon Energy, Chesapeake Energy, Williams Energy, all those energy companies that are based right here in Oklahoma. And we prioritize energy and oil very, very, very well. And it's my understanding that Horn pretty much sides with Pelosi from the political ads I've seen about 9 times out of 10. So about 90% of the time, Horn sides with Nancy Pelosi, which Pelosi is clearly against oil and gas. So I think that based on everything I've heard about how Horn doesn't like the oil and gas, and that even Joe Biden doesn't like the oil and the gas industry. I think he talked about during the debates how he wanted to, I think, eliminate the oil and gas industry, if I'm correct.
I don't know if I brought that up on the podcast. I do remember hearing about it, and I will tell you, I've watched. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'll just say real quick on Fox. I believe it was on Fox News. I've heard more than one viewpoint of this. That when people heard, particularly in a battleground state like Pennsylvania, that is also very oil dependent, reliant type of state. When they heard Joe Biden basically come out against oil and fracking, which your state, Oklahoma, is heavily invested in, that was the tipping point for a lot of people to say, something, Joe Biden is not as moderate as we thought he was. He's pretty radical.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that even based on those comments made by Biden, I think, and not only with the way Horn and Pelosi both goes against oil and gas, I think Horn is in trouble. I really think, knowing how oil and fracking dependent, as you brought up, that our state is, I think Horn is in trouble. I think there is a legitimate shot where I think that this time tomorrow night, we may be talking about at this time tomorrow night, we may be talking about Congresswoman-elect Bice instead of Congresswoman Horn.
Yeah, in Oklahoma District 5. And
correct.
David, I really, I'm careful to speculate too far in the specifics of how this election will actually go down. But I think that the amount of support that Trump has nationwide, that is, I think far exceeds what the polls are on TV are willing to admit. And I think people that say that Trump doesn't have a chance of getting reelected, I think they're gonna find out wrong. I really do. And we already see. I'll toss it to you back over to you in a sec, but I know that Hillary Clinton basically came forward and basically told Joe Biden that he should not concede the election. So we already know what their playbook is, and that is they're going to try to obstruct and create chaos. I know in my state, a court basically stepped in. It might even been the Supreme Court. I'm not sure if it was Supreme Court, but it was a court. We'll just say. Basically told.
I think it was the North Carolina Supreme Court. Sorry to interrupt, but I think it was the North Carolina Supreme Court that stepped in. From what I understood,
it might have been, and it was definitely a court ruling that basically said that North Carolina, get this, could accept absentee ballots 9 days after the election day. Now, David, I know that the mail isn't always as fast as it should be, but come on. People have known for months that this election was coming. They've had plenty of time to turn their ballots back in, David. I don't know about you, but I just smell a rat with that. I really do.
I do too. That is, what can I say? That is, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
It is just absolutely ridiculous, and it's really sad how much liberals have taken over North Carolina, because I think I heard over the weekend that at one point North Carolina was once a reliably Republican, and now you have all these liberals that are coming into places like the Reese Triangle region of North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, Cary, places like that, and in Mecklenburg County and Charlotte, that is pretty much turning the Tar Heel state from red to almost kind of blue, you might say.
It kind of is going in that direction. I do think that there's at least a good probability at this point that Trump has it in his favor, that he will secure North Carolina, assuming that there's no voter fraud that takes place. We'll just have to wait and see. But there is one metric that I want to point out to viewers, and that is Miami-Dade County, Florida. Now, I used to basically live there part-time. My dad used to live there and work there for Customs and Border Protection. And I will tell you that Miami-Dade County, there's two major things to take into account, and this is to build up to my point. One, in Miami-Dade County, and that of course is where Miami Beach, Hialeah, and all those places. That county is heavily Democrat controlled, but you also have a large number of people that have come from Cuba, or perhaps Cuba or whatever. But anyways, they have a lot of them have experienced firsthand what communism is like, and I will tell you, the Democrats have actually now sounded the alarm there that they're underperforming. Get this, underperforming in the early voting in that, and I guess I'm assuming in that county. And I was watching TV, I believe, yeah, it was Fox News, and Trump held a rally in Opelika, Florida, which is in Miami-Dade County. And David, apparently there were people there that had been, and this was like late in the evening, about 11 o'clock or later. And Trump didn't wrap up until after midnight there. And some people had been there since like 6 in the morning. Like they had been there for 18 hours waiting to see Trump. And the number of people that were there against what was coined COVID curfews was absolutely incredible, David. So I think we're already seeing the signs that the numbers are well within Trump's favor. Now, whether or not the Democrats will be able to pull off voter fraud, we'll have to wait and see. I do believe Trump is ready. He's got the lawyers in place to challenge anything that comes up. But David, I feel pretty good going into this. What's your general take? Nationwide that is.
I think I feel pretty good about where this election is going to probably go towards. I think that obviously the heavily reliably Republican states like Oklahoma and places like that just vote reliably Republican. That's pretty much going to be the states that Trump carries, and then obviously the reliably Democratic states like Illinois and California and New York and places like that. Those states, I believe Biden will probably carry there as well, most likely. I think the bigger question is going to be Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, your state of North Carolina, and Florida. Those are the states where I honestly think we have to keep an eye on. And maybe perhaps a couple other states as well. Maybe perhaps even Texas, where a lot of the major cities down there in the state of Texas, like Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, they have pretty much been trending Democratic down there in those counties like Dallas, Tarrant, and Travis counties. They've been trending Democratic, so I would keep an eye on Texas too. Which for years Texas was, reliably Republican too. But I gotta be honest, Jonathan, I'm not so sure if Texas is going to be reliably Republican this time around, because you have so many, people in our generation and people like that as much as I like to say it, Jonathan, but they generally are reliably Democrats, and they're moving to those big cities like Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin, and in Houston.
It's like they didn't learn their lesson from where they moved away from. It's like, did it not occur to them that they left like California, Oregon, or wherever it was they came from, because they had their politics destroyed their state, and yet they're not going to learn their lesson to where they moved to. I just don't understand that. I really don't. I'm at a loss.
I agree.
I think a lot of them just aren't thinking. A lot of them just don't think logically in that sense. But not to put people in despair. I do believe personally that things are on the up and up. And I will tell you this. I have heard people say that Minnesota, which hasn't gone Republican, I believe since 1972. Someone can check me on that if I didn't get the year right, but I believe 1972 was the last time they went Republican for the presidency in Minnesota. And they're actually entertaining the possibility Trump could actually take Minnesota because of what the Democrats have done with all the rioting, the looting was just been awash in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And I think, David, nationwide people have, the silent majority, if you will, they have looked at all the stuff that Democrats done. I mean, let's remember what they did to Kavanaugh and what they did to Trump with the sham impeachment proceedings. David, I have to say, I think the Democrats backfired on their plan, because I think that people looked at this and they were disgusted with what they were seeing. It wasn't due process or politics as it should be. It was literally character assassination without any shred of repentance whatsoever.
Exactly. And one of the major concerns that I see with Trump is that if presumably here, keyword presumably, Trump loses the election, my concern is going to be that Democrats will try to go after Trump and prosecute him once if he's gone from office. I mean, I kid you not. That's what the Democrats are going to try and do once Trump leaves office. Whether it be after January next year or perhaps 4 years from now.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because something, I think that people think this is just another election, and I'm here to tell you it's not. This is not another 4-year election, as the Patriot Intelligence Insider said, because here's the thing. If the Democrats win, what are they going to do? They've already basically admitted by refusing to denounce the notion that they would pack the Supreme Court to offset the conservative appointees. They'll admit D.C. and Puerto Rico as states so they can get more Democrat senators, and also they'll come after people's guns. So that means that there will be no counterbalance against tyranny, because the reason why, David, that we've been able to enjoy so much liberty in this country for so long, and the Founding Fathers knew this, is that if you have an armed people, then it's like peace through strength. Then the tyrants won't push it beyond a certain point, if you know what I mean. And David, I really believe Trump's going to win, but I'll tell people this: everyone, no matter where they live, no matter how far red the state may be, you have to act like the whole election comes down to your vote, because it might in some of these states. And I'll tell you this. I'll just tell you this too. I believe, and I keep reiterating this because I want to encourage people. I don't want to sit here and be all doom and gloom, although I'm trying to get people's attention at the same time. But I believe that Trump will win, and I believe he's not going to just take the Electoral College, which is how you elect a president in this country, but he's also going to, I believe, take the popular vote, because I believe when those two things happen, the deep state is not going to be able to say anything. So when Trump finally goes after the central bank, and that's the Federal Reserve, when he finally goes after the deep state and the Democrats and all their treasonous crimes and all that stuff, crimes against humanity, he's going to have that mandate behind him. He's going to be able to say, look, I didn't just win by the rules. I have the majority of the people in record-breaking numbers who voted for me. So I think, David, things are on the up and up, that people really do need to make sure and go vote.
I agree. I really believe that voting is going to be, very important. I know I am going to be going to vote as soon as I get done with what I need to do with schooling and everything tomorrow. I know that for sure. I just hope that everybody goes and casts their vote, because this is not just another election here. This is probably one of the more important elections that I can ever recall, possibly in our lifetime.
Oh, I think it's definitely in our lifetime, for sure. I think, David, it could very well be the most consequential election since Abraham Lincoln. And people have made that comparison. I've heard people on TV basically make that comparison. So I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure Trump gets back in. I want to mention a couple of things. I think that people need to understand. When you look at Israel, let's take Israel for a second. I don't think that Israel has ever had a greater friend as a president than in President Trump. What did President Trump do? He did what other presidents promised to do but never did. He moved the embassy, the U.S. embassy, which is effectively an affirmation that Jerusalem is indeed the capital of Israel, which it is, because the Bible makes that clear. He moved the U.S. embassy under budget, by the way, to Jerusalem. He also recognized the Golan Heights, the Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. So, David, just on that metric alone, Israel loves Trump. So I don't understand. This is the thing I don't understand. I'll say this too. I have a friend who lives in the Philippines. Hopefully he doesn't mind me mentioning him. I won't mention his name, but hopefully he doesn't mind me mentioning him. He's in the Philippines. And yet, what does he want to do? He wants to come to America, because that's what people want to do. They see what this country is about. This country is about hope and liberty. And if you come through the legal process, absolutely, come on in. And people in other countries recognize how unique this country is, how blessed we are, how much God has blessed us. And yet, David, what I don't understand, and I think this goes down to how brainwashed a lot of people are, they take it for granted. They think that America is so terrible. People in our own country trash mouthing this country, David, and yet other countries look to us and they see us as a tremendous blessing. And I truly believe this, that God literally uses this country as a beacon of light, as a beacon of hope, I should say, for the whole world. And I think, David, that if Trump loses, it will be our fault. I truly believe that. But I believe Trump's going to win. I think that the numbers are in his favor. And by the way, the polls on TV are meant to shape a narrative. I think the internal polling, as other people have said, the internal polling, which is the real poll numbers, they show more accurately that Trump is ahead. But David, I didn't mean to go off on that for so long. I just felt like I needed to mention that. But I just think I'll tell you this. If I can just say, I have never been more proud and more blessed to be an American than I do right now. I truly mean that. And there is no perfect country, in the current state of things. But I'll tell you this, I don't think it gets any better than this country. I just really don't. And people in other countries, and I'll mention this too before I toss it back to you. In Hong Kong, the movement there where they've wanted to basically have independence from China. They wanted, or at least have freedom from the oppressive rule of China. What flag do they fly? They fly, if you look at the footage, they have flown the American flag. That to them is the symbol of freedom and liberty. And yet the Democrats talk about how we're this terrible country, this doom and gloom look of America. And they say we have to apologize for being America, and that we're supposed to just capitulate, and that we should just give up on American sovereignty. David, I don't think anybody could possibly look at what we have in front of us, whether, the difference between Trump and Biden. I don't even know how someone can begin to compare. Because with Trump, you've got people from all political viewpoints supporting him because they see how radicalized the Democrats have become. Am I off on that?
No, you're not off at all. I mean, it's really clear how radical the liberals, the deep staters, the Democrats have gone. It's really clear to me. You brought that up about Minnesota. How radical they went after what happened with George Floyd. Yeah. It really proves, the fact that I think Minnesota, I failed to mention this, I think Minnesota could be another toss-up state. That's another state that has always, pretty much since at least the 74, 76 election, at least the 76 election, that state has always has pretty much been reliably Democrat. And, there's a good possibility here that Trump may carry Minnesota. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
I'll just mention this in passing before we get to this Gavin Newsom deal, but and we are kind of running out of time here, but I just wanted to mention real quick too, something else, that another interesting metric about Minnesota specifically, and that is Mike Lindell. If people don't know who Mike Lindell is, maybe they might know his company MyPillow. Now, if you've watched Fox News at all, I'm sure you've seen the MyPillow commercials. He's a Christian, and I don't know if he's officially announced it, but people have widely said that he could be in the running for the governorship in Minnesota. And David, and I'm sure he'll run as a Republican. And you know something, David? I can actually now see that happening if he decides to go for that.
I agree. I think I literally could see Mike Lindell run for governor in Minnesota. I can legitimately see that happening. I literally think so.
Yeah.
We'll we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And now on to the Gavin Newsom thing now.
Okay.
And go ahead and share your thoughts as I'm pulling up this article from ABC7. It'll probably obviously take a moment for it to load and everything. Go ahead.
Basically, and I'm still getting my head around this, but as I understand, the news broke tonight that a judge, I believe, I want to say Sutter County, California. Anyways, it was a judge in California.
Sutter County, yes.
Okay. It's one of the counties, not Sacramento, but one of the counties, I guess, surrounding or at least in the general proximity to Sacramento. But anyways, the judge basically ruled that he went out of bounds with his COVID lockdown, his COVID, or I should say COVID restrictions. And, I think, David, that, and we'll you'll share the article here in a second. I still have yet to see it come up on my end, but I'll just say this. In California, whenever there's a case like this, people need to remember, just because it's in that one state doesn't mean it won't ultimately affect you, because what that creates, because we're in a common law system here, we operate in a lot of ways on precedent, which means that when a judge rules on something, later on a judge will refer back to that prior court case to help determine his later court case. So basically, this may influence down the road to tell these other states, you've gone too far too. Because if California can be declared unconstitutional, and if Pennsylvania and I believe Michigan can be declared unconstitutional, then there's no way someone could convince me that somehow North Carolina or other states are different. So I think that this is wonderful news. I hope that California can start to get out from under this tyrannical rule, maybe recall Gavin Newsom, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But definitely good news for the cause of liberty tonight in California.
I agree, and you're right. If California can, say, wait a minute, Newsom, wait a minute, you're going too far. There's no reason why, as you said, there's no reason why they couldn't do the same in North Carolina or Michigan. They did the same in Pennsylvania too.
Yeah.
I think there's no reason why they couldn't, do the same there in those states.
Right.
So I think we'll just have to wait and see what happens with the whole Gavin Newsom thing in California. But obviously, I think as we go ahead and wrap this up for tonight, I think I should mention this too. We cannot express enough how important this election is. Go vote. If you have not done so yet, go vote. Your voice matters.
Absolutely. Because, David, I couldn't have said it any better myself. I'll just add that in total agreement with what you just said, and I'll just add on to that by saying, if you look at the first words of the Constitution, it says "we the people." I think that people take for granted the fact that in this country, this is what's so special and unique about America. Unlike the UK and a lot of these other countries where they say, "Oh, this one person, this royalty is the sovereign." Actually, in America, it is not even the president who's sovereign. He represents the people. But the people, we the people, that means if you're an American citizen, you, as David is, as I am, as every American citizen is, we're all the collective sovereign of America. So, and that's to say, the power, the authority of America is vested in each and every one of us. So when you go vote, you are casting your ballot, but you're not just casting your ballot, you are making for lack of a better way to put it, a decision of sovereignty, if you will, for what you want to have happen for the next 4 years. And I just cannot stress enough, as David just said, your voice matters. It may come down to your vote in some of these areas. So And I'm not kidding when I say that. So please make sure you go vote. And by the way, if you see any suspicious activity at a voting precinct, you need to report it to the DOJ. That's the Department of Justice. They will have people out, by the way, in a lot of these major cities. I know they will have people out in Mecklenburg County. That's where Charlotte is. So I think Trump is on top of it. But if you see any suspicious activity, you don't even have to be sure of it. I would go ahead and report it, just to be on the safe side. That way they can be aware of it, David. So any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No final thoughts other than go vote.
Yeah, absolutely, David. And it's a big moment. It's a big moment. It's all been building up to this moment, and we will see what happens. I feel good about it. I can tell you this with 100% certainty that God is in control, and I believe that God didn't bring us this far to let us fail now. So I believe our best days are ahead for America, and we'll just wait and see what happens with this election. And of course, we'll be covering what happens here on the Citizen Report. And David, thank you for coming on tonight. I really do appreciate it, as always. And do tell viewers where they can find you on social media.
Right now, you can still find me on Facebook and Twitter and Discord and YouTube. I'm still planning to leave Facebook soon. I don't know when that's going to happen, and maybe the end of the year before I depart Facebook. We'll just see what happens. But for now, Facebook, Twitter, and Discord and YouTube.
Absolutely. All right, David. I appreciate you as always. And to viewers at home, thank you for watching the Citizen Report. Be sure to go to our website, thecitizenreport.weebly.com. Subscribe to our text message notifications so I can let you know whenever there's a new episode. And also, if we ever get censored, if we get pulled down from social media, that way I have an ability to still get information out to you. And just quickly before I wrap up, I want to let people know, if you've stuck to the end of this, if you have any background in broadcasting, a couple of things. One, I'm looking to get a new voiceover for the podcast. I'm also looking to build out new graphics. I'm hoping going into next year, we can really, really upgrade our look significantly here on the Citizen Report. So if anybody out there has an interest in helping us out with that, please feel free to reach out. We would appreciate that greatly. So on that note, thank you for watching the Citizen Report again. God bless each and every one of you, and we'll see you right back here again next time. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.